Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now, Celtic face what I think is a bit of an uphill task tomorrow night against Bayer Leverkusen, one of the best teams in Germany. That task has probably only got even harder today with the injury update given by the manager Ange Postecoglou, but we can forget about all of that for now because I've got a bit of introducing to do. David, first of all, hello.
Hi Hamish, thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. And of course, the big dog, the main man in this video, Mr. Derek Rae. Now, just humour me for a second, Derek. Former Scottish football commentator for the likes of ESPN, BT Sport. He's now the lead Bundesliga voice on ESPN, as well as doing La Liga and much more. And most importantly for me, Derek, you're the voice of English commentary on FIFA, which I believe is out this week. Is that right?
Yes, good timing that we're talking this week because it comes out and it's the new game. It's FIFA 22. So, yeah, I always hear from a lot of people around this time of year with the launch of the game.
I was playing FIFA 10 minutes ago, so this is a bit of a strange situation. I was actually playing Celtic versus Bayer Leverkusen.
Did they win?
I won't tell you how it went. I'll keep that quiet. It wasn't a positive result, let's just say that. Derek, you're in the States, but what have you made of Celtic's start to the season? I'm assuming you still kind of stay on top of what's happening.
Yeah, I try to. I don't get to watch every game nowadays because of my other commitments, as you've mentioned, mostly the Bundesliga and La Liga, but I try to watch highlights every so often. I'm aware of the news stories. I'm aware of Ange Postecoglou and his background, and I actually spoke up for him quite a lot during the summer when there were doubts about that appointment because I think he's a very credible coach who needs the right structure, like any coach, in order to perform to the best of his abilities. But it's obviously a trying season and start to the season if you're a Celtic fan, but these things come in cycles, don't they? And every time there's a long, successful period, and there has been for Celtic, then there has to be a down period before you can come back up again. And this is clearly the down period. It reminds me a little bit of 1993-ish. You know, I'm old enough to
way before my time, Derek. And
yeah,
David's as well.
Not before mine, unfortunately, but it does sort of remind me of that period in the early 90s. And as I say, every club has to go through it, and you'll just hope that you come out the other side better for the experience.
Hopefully. What's the size of the task tomorrow night then against the team currently sitting in second in the Bundesliga?
Big task for Celtic. I think there's no doubt about that. Leverkusen, for me, are one of the most watchable teams in the Bundesliga, not just good in quality terms, but easy on the eye. And let's go down to basics. They have a new coach in Gerardo Seoane, who was at Young Boys in Switzerland, actually was the coach of Young Boys when they knocked Leverkusen out of the Europa League last season. That wasn't the only reason why they hired him, but it certainly was a contributory factor. Leverkusen are not the best supported club in Germany. They come from an area between Cologne and Dusseldorf. They're more of a family club than anything else, but it's a great place to go and watch a game, as some Celtic fans will discover later in this group stage. It's a small, compact stadium, and every seat in the house is a good one. And they benefit a little bit from the rules in Germany because they're known as the Werkself, which is the factory 11, if you like, the factory club. And it goes back to the early days of the Bayer chemical company. And so they were founded, if you like, as the football section of this Bayer factory. So imagine that, a sort of a works team for people who worked in the factory. Now, they've come a long way from that point, but they sort of do benefit in comparison with other clubs because of the rules and because of the Bayer influence. And you hear a lot about 50+1 in the context of German football and how that's very popular with most fans. It can sometimes be a detriment when it comes to the structure of a club. So clubs like Leverkusen and Wolfsburg with Volkswagen have this slight advantage over others. But they're very well run. They have a great sporting director in Simon Rolfes, who used to play for the club. And much of it is down to his own scouting network and their ability to unearth young talents early in their careers. And that's what they're really trying to do. They're trying to sort of rebuild the club with this latest generation of young players. They have a whole host of them who I think we're going to be hearing about at the highest level of the game for some time. Florian Wirtz is the best example of that. Everybody knows Kai Havertz, who of course came through Leverkusen. Wirtz, if anything, might be better than Havertz. We'll see. But he's a joy to watch. He just this past weekend became the youngest player ever to hit the 10 goals mark in terms of his career in the Bundesliga. And we could go on and on about some of these other players, and feel free to ask about any of them. But that's the basics when it comes to Leverkusen. New coach, attacking style, young players, great to watch. Difficult task for Celtic.
Yeah, I've actually been to the Bayer Arena. I was there, I think, 2015. I saw them lose to Darmstadt. Lucas Zaluska was, I don't think he played, but he was on the bench. I don't remember much about the game. I was extremely drunk that day, but I was on holiday in Germany, so you can let me away with it. David, Gerardo Soriani is a guy who I actually wanted at Celtic in the summer, given the job he'd done at Young Boys. He's gone to Leverkusen, and it seems like he has them playing very well.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't realise that they were second in the Bundesliga until I looked up in their recent form a couple of days ago. Very impressive looking team. But I feel as though Bayer Leverkusen have had that reputation for quite a while now, not just this season. I think, Derek, last time a lot of Celtic fans would have caught a good glimpse of Leverkusen was against Rangers in, I think it was March 2020 when they were drawn in the Europa League. Obviously a different manager then, Peter Bosz. What has the evolution or revolution perhaps been like under the new manager compared to what we saw under Bosz? Because for me personally, I don't know if Leverkusen particularly performed at their peak level in that tie. They looked a very efficient side. If not anything spectacular, how different are they under the new man?
They're not radically different, David. They still sort of play this brand of, as I said, eye-catching football. And they did that under Peter Bosz. But the problem under Bosz was they were just woefully inconsistent. And they ultimately had to make the change. The results were quite poor in the second half of last season. So he left his post. Hannes Wolf came in to try to steady the ship. The football wasn't as exciting under him, but he did just enough to solidify their European place. So I wouldn't say it's a revolution. It's more an evolution of what they were doing before, what they've been trying to do for a while. And, they're realistic. They know that with these young players, after 2 or 3 years, they're going to sell them on, And I think we can get specific. I've mentioned Florian Wirtz and how good he is. The other one who I think you have to keep your eyes out for is Moussa Diaby, who came through the PSG academy. Leverkusen were very lucky to get him, and he is just explosive. He plays normally on the right, but he's left-footed, and he's developed this really good understanding with somebody who you'll both know, Jeremy Frimpong.
You're not allowed to mention him, Derek. You're not allowed to mention him.
Oh, well, I've made that mistake already. Sorry. He's been mentioned. No, seriously, Frimpong didn't do so well last season when he joined, didn't really get that many chances, but he's emerged as a right back and a good one for Leverkusen with this system that Gerardo Soriani likes to play. It's almost always been 4-2-3-1. And so Diaby is one of the three, behind the one who, of course, would normally be Patrick Schick. And, of course, the big debate is, well, you might not play Schick in every game and you might rest him for this one and bring in Lucas Alario, but I dare say Patrick Schick, with it being in Glasgow, is going to be thinking, I want to play in that match. It's not
Stay in your lane, Joe Hart. Stay in your lane.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. But, I mean, he's a player who this season has reached an even higher level, and I think the Euros certainly helped him with that. He was a good player before, a good all-round striker, but he's now, at the level of one of the most fearsome strikers in the Bundesliga. And you can go up and down the team. As I've mentioned, Diaby, mentioned Wirtz, mentioned Schick. The goalkeeper is also the captain. He was at the Euros playing for Finland, Lukas Radecki, who's a very loud, boisterous kind of character, loves beer, loves kind of, the old-time style of football, professionalism from the 80s and 90s, in his own words. He thinks he would have been a good fit for that era. He's just the sort of the everyman who you relate to and you like, and he has a smile on his face and he gives brilliant quotes after matches. If there's a softness about them, you would say, or would have said until recently, it would be the defense, because they were conceding goals. They did against Dortmund in what was an instant classic of a game, 4-3 to Dortmund. Leverkusen were 1-0 up, 2-1 up, 3-2 up. Then it went to 3-3 and Erling Haaland scored a penalty to decide it. And that's when I know Seoane was a bit disappointed with the lack of defensive togetherness. But in the last couple of games, the defense has been the strength. They beat Stuttgart 3-1, playing with 10 men for most of that game. And that was a difficult task. Robert Andrich had been sent off, won the game 3-1. And then this past weekend, they took on Mainz, good Mainz team at the moment. And a Wirtz goal, again, beat them 1-0. And Hradecky made a lot of very important saves towards the end. The defensive anchor is normally Jonathan Tah, who went off the boil at the beginning of last season, but has come back really strongly in this campaign. They've just extended his contract until 2025. And it's a matter of who plays beside him. Tah more experienced. It'll be one of the less experienced defenders, either Odilon Kosunu, young Ivorian, or probably more likely Piero Hincapié, who is a really good young defender from Ecuador who they've signed and they want to give minutes to. So that gives you some sort of idea of the team. They like to pass it around. They can defend as well. They can press, when not in possession too. But I do think if we're looking for positives from a Celtic angle, the one thing that German teams do talk about, and sometimes this can be an overrated factor, but they do talk about things like the special atmosphere of Celtic Park on a European night. And I know that it's always a popular draw because teams enjoy having that experience. They enjoy going to a place like Celtic Park because, let's face it, you might get to do it once, in your football career. And you know that it's not like going to some grounds where, there are 7,000 people inside and most are sort of vaguely interested, but not that much. Celtic Park does speak for itself. But I do often feel that sometimes when they talk about that they're talking about that factor as being the dangerous factor rather than the Celtic team, and maybe there's something in that. But I think with the Europa League, we do see that things can be unpredictable and you never quite know how it's going to go. It'll be a rotated Leverkusen team, but I wouldn't think, radically so. I wouldn't think we're looking at 5-6 changes or anything like that, probably 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's a good point you make about the crowd at Celtic Park and the atmosphere there. I often think German teams are probably the group of teams that are likely to be less influenced by that because, the Bundesliga, basically every team plays to 40,000 odd at least. Well, most teams do. Maybe Spanish teams coming over, it might be a bit of a fright for them because they only get it maybe 5 or 6 times a season. Even in England, there's a lot of smaller 20,000, 25,000 grounds. I always think teams like Leverkusen, who admittedly do play in a smaller stadium themselves, they're kind of going to be fine because they play at, Bayern and Gladbach and Dortmund and Schalke when they were in the league and Stuttgart who get 60,000. And you feel as if they're almost coming over and relishing the atmosphere rather than being intimidated by it. I remember Mats Hummels when he came over for Bayern Munich in the Champions League, taking photos before the game, taking photos after the game, posting on Twitter after the game. David, it doesn't seem as if these guys are going to come over and be intimidated by the atmosphere. They're going to probably relish playing in such a great atmosphere because they're used to it as well.
Oh, look at the high quality of players they've got. It's not going to scare them, I don't think. And to be honest, Hamish, as much as we all, love and respect the Celtic Park atmosphere, there have been a lot of teams that have popped the bubble over in recent years. Looking at the likes of Copenhagen, for example. I don't think anyone would have predicted us losing 3-1 there. There have been examples. They're not rushing to my head at the minute, but I know I can remember plenty of teams. Cluj, Salzburg took us apart that night. So there's a lot of teams in the past from countries that maybe aren't as renowned as German football that have come and gotten results at Celtic Park. So I do sort of think we still talk about that atmosphere as though it's a potentially game-defining trait we have. But I just feel personally that magic is gone in recent years, not in terms of what the atmosphere provides, but in terms of its effect on games. I don't know what's happened compared to back in maybe 2006, 2007, 08, and we were getting incredible results at home, AC Milan, Manchester United, teams like that. But it just feels as though our home form, regardless of how many fans are in, seems to be waning over the last 5 years or so. And I'd expect a really strong Bayer Leverkusen to not be too flustered by it. I think, like Derek says, I think they'll enjoy it. Like you said, Hamish, I think they'll relish going to play in that atmosphere, but it won't be one of fear. We've seen too many poor results at Parkhead in recent years for that to come into our minds, I think. But it's a game I'm really looking forward to, despite the injury crisis. There's no point wanting to qualify for these competitions and then starting to get scared when you face the big boys. I don't understand that. This is what you're in the competition for. I know we could be set up a lot better, with regards to our injuries and whatnot. But what an opportunity for certain players. What an opportunity for the 11 that's going to go out against a team like Bayer Leverkusen. A chance to make themselves heroes on the night. And I can't wait. It'll be an electric atmosphere. And I think we'll get some chances as well. So I'm hoping for a competitive performance, just like we put in against Betis.
Derek, you've covered basically every player I have on my list here. You've just worked your way through them. The one you haven't mentioned is Mitchell Bakker, who will be familiar to a lot of Celtic fans. We don't know how close he was to signing for Celtic last summer. My feeling is it probably wasn't ever really close, but he was certainly a player that the club wanted at some stage or at one stage under Neil Lennon. Will he play tomorrow night, do you think? How's he been doing in Germany?
He's done pretty well so far since he came in at left back. And it's funny, he obviously had been playing in French football, and he was talking about the differences and saying he's really had to get used to the back and forth nature of German football, because it is back and forth. You don't really get teams sitting in, or not too many teams just sitting in, and Leverkusen are directing the traffic. Even against a team like Mainz at the weekend or Stuttgart the week before, it's much more back and forth and very competitive. So he's sort of said he's had to make that adjustment, but he's done well. I thought he was especially good in the 4-0 win against Borussia Mönchengladbach a few weeks ago. And I'm not sure, in answer to your question, Hamish, I'm not sure if he will start, because they also have Daley Sinkgrafen, who they need to give games to, and this might be a game for him at left back. He's another Dutch player who had been there prior to the season and had been injured and has sort of lost his place to Bakker, his fellow countryman. So that's where they might make the subtle changes. I wouldn't think at right back so much. I wouldn't think in too many of the attacking positions. Maybe Alario will come in and Schick will start on the bench, but left back could be a decision between Bakker and Sinkgrafen.
Yeah, I think they went quite full strength against Ferencváros. Maybe 2 or 3 positions they changed it up. Derek, you were on the verge of saying something major at the start of this video when you were comparing Wirtz to Havertz.
Yeah.
I feel like you were onto something there. Do you want to expand on why you think, or how good you think Wirtz can be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can compare and contrast directly because I commentated on not every single one of Kai Havertz's early games, but a lot of them. And I remember at the time thinking, this is just an otherworldly talent. And I don't remember a German talent quite like this coming through in the recent past. So now we have Wirtz, and we've seen enough of Wirtz only in the last 18 months. He made his debut right after the teams came back following the initial phase of the pandemic. And we can see already that this is another one who is just right at the top of the charts already. And he does everything. And I think the one statistic, they want to use metrics, and sometimes metrics aren't the best way to assess a young player. But here's one that I think does tell you a lot. Most productive player in the Bundesliga so far this season, if you look at goals and assists. Last check, it was 1 every 30 minutes. So he's either scoring or he's creating a goal once every 30 minutes. And he's 18
as well.
He's 18.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
He's 18 years of age, And already there is talk about, when he will be sold, which will not be in the short term. Leverkusen will hang on to him for a while, but the best guess is probably 2023. Summer of 2023 would probably be the time, and already Bayern have emerged as the favourites to have him added to their already impressive squad. So I think it's something for Celtic fans are always sporting fans when it comes to a night like this. Yeah, you want Celtic to win, but I think always conscious of history. And I think in years to come, Celtic fans will be saying, oh, you remember that young lad, 18-year-old Wirtz who I watched? Yeah, look what he's doing now, And I think it will be one of those occasions to savour a very special talent. Just watch him. Just have a look at him for a couple of minutes. Just watch his movement, watch his passing, watch the way he makes his runs, and you'll hope, not admiring a goal that he scored or set up or anything like that. But we are watching greatness in the making when it comes to Florian Wirtz.
Yeah, I remember Vincent Kompany playing for Anderlecht in 2003 against Celtic, so maybe we'll get a similar feeling there.
Yeah.
Frimpong as well. David,
Yep.
First of all, I'll come to you, David. What kind of reaction do you think Jeremy Frimpong will get tomorrow, and what kind of reaction does he deserve?
Does he deserve a negative one or something? Because I certainly, I mean, why on earth should he get anything other than a respectful applause from the support? I mean, I certainly couldn't have a go at Jeremy Frimpong for leaving Celtic for Bayer Leverkusen. You've got to take the emotional aspect out of it. Frimpong isn't sort of born and grown up steeped in Celtic tradition as a Celtic supporter. That's a massive opportunity for him, and it looks like the right decision as well because he's playing regularly for them. I've no gripe against Frimpong, Hamish, to be honest, and I think he deserves a respectful sort of welcome back from the supporters. Listen, I don't think everybody will want to be giving him a hug and a kiss, but it's not a decision that I think merits great criticism or any criticism, to be honest. What I'd like to know about Frimpong, though, Derek, I don't know about you, Hamish, when he was at Celtic, as great a talent as he was, his final ball infuriated me, absolutely infuriated me. He'd get to the byline so often, he'd have so much space down the right flank at times, but when he had time and space to pick out a ball, it was as if he couldn't do it at times. I'm not even going over the top there. It feels as though that was the main weakness in his game. How has that developed, Derek, at Bayer Leverkusen? Is he a lot more efficient when it comes to his final ball? Because if he is, he might just be the biggest threat on the night.
He's got much better, I think it's fair to say. And I don't know if it's something specifically they've worked on with him in Leverkusen. But as I said, I think that understanding with Diaby is not to be underplayed. And you can tell the two of them really enjoy playing with each other. They sort of complement each other, that right-footed player and then the left-footed Diaby who likes to cut in, likes to get it onto his left foot and cut in. And that often sort of leaves space for Frimpong to go, to bomb forward on the right. And his crossing has not noticeably been weak. I think the one area that maybe still needs work is when he's sort of isolated defensively. And, sometimes will just make a little mental error against a good, strong opponent on the left-hand side. But for the most part, he's been really good. And it wasn't necessarily the grand plan to have him play at right back this season. They have Timothy Fosu-Mensah, who's been out for a long time, cruciate surgery, and he's going to be out for a while longer. So Frimpong has made that position his own and has really prospered there. And it's interesting. I remember when he went to Leverkusen and actually translated his quotes on Twitter. I think some Celtic fans took it the wrong way. What he was trying to say was, but he said that he came from, the German word is Niemandsland. He said he'd come from sort of nowhere land, from no man's land, if you like. But what he was really trying to say was that he didn't really think that Celtic was necessarily a club on the radar for a team like Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. We have to be realistic nowadays. There was a time when you could have said Celtic and Leverkusen might have been on a par when it came to, looking for players and competing for players. But Leverkusen are a very progressive club, one of the best teams in Germany. And that's the sort of club that young players like to go to develop. They won't stay there forever either. They'll go to Bayern or to an English club eventually. But I think that's the big difference in the last few years, that once upon a time, these clubs in Germany like Leverkusen, like Gladbach, might have been there or thereabout with Celtic in terms of being able to attract players, but there's a difference now, and it's pointless trying to sort of quibble with that, I think.
Sorry, I was just thinking about Frimpong and an Ange team there and how amazing that would have been if he'd have been playing in, the way Ange likes to play with the fullbacks.
Yeah.
I guess it's one of those things we'll never get to know. He can't be far off a Netherlands call-up either, the way he's playing for Leverkusen, so he's definitely a player on the up. Right, injury news, just briefly. Josip Juranovic is out for a couple of weeks. It's a hamstring injury, as was suspected. James McCarthy is fit for tomorrow night. McGregor and Kyogo both trained today but won't be available for tomorrow. Ange says Giakoumakis also trained today. Again, we're not sure. I would doubt he would play tomorrow, but we're not sure. And finally, David, quite a telling comment, I think, from Ange. He says he, quote, doesn't expect to make too many changes tomorrow night. I suppose we don't really have many options to change it up anyway, so it's not wholly surprising.
No, it's frustrating. As we said earlier, we're not in the best place going into this game, not in the place we'd have liked going into it. There's nothing the manager can do, really. I mean, you can go on and on about introducing B players into the team and things like that, maybe B players that have made the Europa League squad, etc., etc. Chances are that won't improve your team. That's just freshening it up, really. I think what he played at the weekend against Dundee United probably is his strongest 11 at the minute. A lot of fans weren't happy with it and weren't happy with the team, but you just look at the squad just now and you think, what else can he do? I don't think there's anything he can do with it. He's not going to change his shape, so we should stop conversations like that. We know what Ange Postecoglou's like by now. He's very stubborn about how he wants his team to set up. That actually leaves me another question, Derek, about Ange Postecoglou's style. We know how, as I said, how stubborn he is with it. He's attack. He wants to be high intensity. I know supporters will maybe question whether that was on show at the weekend. But how would a style like that suit coming up against a team like Bayer Leverkusen with their quality?
They won't be unaccustomed to that kind of style because there are quite a few teams in Germany who adopt a similar sort of style. So I don't think that their feathers will be ruffled by that particularly. But as I say, these games can have their own dynamic, and being at Celtic Park, if a few, even just a couple, have an off night for Leverkusen or aren't mentally ready for that test, then it's possible it could have the desired effect for Celtic. I've got a question for you guys. So who's going to play at left back on the left hand side for Celtic? Who's likely to be there?
Montgomery in.
I think it'll be Montgomery as well. Yeah,
because I think that'll be really key to the whole thing. Obviously, I've mentioned Frimpong and Diaby on that side. That's where Leverkusen can be particularly devastating. So I would say watch out for that. And one other player we didn't mention, who you might see maybe even from the start, but at some point, Amin Adli was another young teenager. They've just signed recently from Toulouse. And there was quite the competition for his signature. It looked like he might go to Bayern. He chose Leverkusen because he was very impressed with what Zeoane said to him, what Simon Rolf has said to him, and just looking at their track record of giving young players a chance. Plays on the left-hand side, really talented, really skillful. So remember that name if he comes on, Adli, because he's another player who can take the opposition to the cleaners.
No injury crisis or anything, Derek?
No COVID outbreak. We obviously don't wish that in anyone, but any advantage to Celtic.
Yeah, there are a couple of players who haven't travelled. Andri hasn't travelled. He's a big, bustling, sort of rugged central midfield type who they signed from Union, but I wouldn't necessarily have started. Ezequiel Palacios, skillful central midfield player. He hasn't travelled either. But sorry to say, guys, there's no big injury crisis brewing, and
it's worth asking. It's
a strong Leverkusen team, but the main thing is enjoy the game. I'm certainly going to look forward to it.
Just quickly, we'll do our teams, David. That's my predicted 11, everyone. Joe Hart in goals, a back four of Ralston, Carter Vickers, Starfelt and Montgomery. James McCarthy in midfield with Rogic and Turnbull ahead of him. Abada on the right, Jota on the left, and I think you have to start Ajeti. I think you're basically ending his Celtic career tomorrow if you don't start him and if you play a winger up front. And I think McCarthy, it could maybe suit him a bit more tomorrow. He's not a playmaker. He's a player who will get in people's faces, win the ball back, and he'll have to do that tomorrow. So maybe tomorrow could be the making of McCarthy. David, what's your team?
Yeah, won't surprise you to hear mine's. I've written it down the exact same. But what would you expect with the options available? I don't think he'll throw Liam Scales in at left back. I don't think he'll play Ismaila Soro. I think he'll want a player that's a bit more tactically sound in the midfield than Soro can be. I think he's a wee bit too erratic for this fixture. You know, he could play defensive midfield and all of a sudden you'll see him attacking the box for some reason. So I think he'll try and play it safe, if safe's the word, and put McCarthy in. I don't think I think he's had a hellish time of it so far, McCarthy. I actually feel for him a bit. There's a lot of stick on him for some reason. I think he needs a bit of time. Don't think he can be judged too soon, but I do think he'll be thrown in if he's fit. And the team really picks itself. It's not an 11 I particularly like. I don't necessarily like seeing Rogic and Turnbull in the same team either, guys. I must admit, I think they largely do the same job, and I think at times you see them getting in each other's way. I thought I saw that quite a bit against Dundee United at the weekend. But I think it's what Ange Postecoglou has to do. I don't think the Celtic team will actually even be expecting a win on Thursday night. I really don't. I think the message will really just to try and show their best side, try and get in Bayer Leverkusen's face, try and give them a fright or two, maybe knock them off their stride a wee bit and maybe get some joy. But we have to be realistic as well. You know, it's a really, really tough game. The toughest game we'll have in the group. We're not going into it as well as we would like. And for me, as I said earlier, a competitive performance that shows us up well, you know, gives us a sort of boost to our reputation, which I feel has taken a massive battering over the years in Europe. I'd be quite happy with that, Hamish. I really would, considering the circumstances.
Final thoughts, Derek?
Yeah, I think it's always a kind of a blank sheet of paper when you have two teams who are not used to facing each other, different styles, different dynamic, different vibe. And so, yeah, I think Leverkusen are favourites, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few strange things that happen along the way. And that has been a feature of some of the Leverkusen games, especially that 4-3 against Borussia Dortmund. And if Celtic can force a few mistakes, I mentioned that Frimpong occasionally will make errors. Similarly, you might see that from Hincapié if he starts just because he's inexperienced, and this will be new as far as he's concerned. You know, if Celtic can force things like that, then it's possible. But I'm just looking forward to a really good spectacle in front of a lot of fans, and seeing, as a Bundesliga commentator and a Scot, just seeing how these two match up against each other, and may the best team win.
Yeah, I think we're waiting on the big moment when Ange's Celtic really, you know, get going. That real moment. Maybe it happens tomorrow night. Who knows? It's going
possible.
to be sold out.
Yeah.
The atmosphere is going to be immense. As Derek says, David, let's just enjoy it and see how it goes. Guys, thanks so much. We've really enjoyed doing this video. Derek, great to chat. Great to find out all about Leverkusen. Thanks so much.
Anytime. Enjoy.
Thanks everyone for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you've not done it yet. Let us know your predictions in the comments below, and we'll speak to you after the game tomorrow with the reaction.